A lot's changed over the past year, and today we're going to be looking ahead to understand how skills and skill gaps are changing. So the goal of this fireside chat is to look back at 2025 and then also make some predictions on what's coming for 2026. But before we get into that, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. So Nick, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nick Oddson, and I am the president of SkillsWave.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Kathleen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Carr, and I'm the VP of Client and Provider Experience.
Thank you so much. Lesley, over to you.
Hi, I'm Lesley Dalzell, and I am the head of People and Culture.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Nadeem.
Nadeem Sheikh, head of Product Design and Engineering.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we have an esteemed panel here. I'm really looking forward to sharing everything that they've got in store for you all. But before we kind of get to the predictions part, I wanted to start by looking back before we look ahead. So lots has changed, both in terms of skills and in terms of the labor market. Nick, I did want to start with you. What stood out to you about how organizations kind of approached skill frameworks in this past year?
Yeah, geez. So I guess if anything, I would say there's been sort of a continued evolution of thinking as well as an intensification of that. Like that skills narrative is pretty much in every single conversation that I have with any customers or prospects, educators, organizations that are focused on sort of analyzing and doing understanding around skills and what the hell they apply to industry. So there's so much going on there, and so as it comes up when we're talking about it, there's lots of organizations, and depending on whether you're big or small, they have different sort of tacks on it, and whether it's how important to them or how successful they're going to be able to do it, right? So everyone's looking at how do I concretely understand what my organization understands and knows, right, from a skills base, and then what are the actual skills that I need to progress. And so we're seeing a lot of analysis and things like connected to some of the joint higher education and industry initiatives from BHER and BHEF and things like Burning Glass Institute and so forth. And so as we see that, there's lots of work going on to try and align jobs in companies with that skills base to get a little bit more refined clarity on these are durable skills that are translatable across different jobs. These are the specific job skills. This is what's declining. This is what's increasing around expectations. Obviously, AI is a huge disruptor in that. It's throwing a wrench into pretty much everybody's skill base to understand how it's going to impact it. Lots of work and lots of thinking on there from us and others. And as we see that, there's people that are trying to match the industry. There are people that are trying to come up with a proprietary formula that's unique to them. And I think for us and from my perspective, the thing that will be most critical will be that we need to understand how to interoperate across all those sort of frameworks. Right? There isn't a one framework that's going to work for everybody. Everybody's trying to find the one that fits them the most, and I think we're going to have to be very flexible and dynamic about being able to adapt and showcase not just what your people know, but also what material and what learning is available to you in all those different kinds of frameworks that exist. And that's sort of what we're talking about a lot nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, you mentioned something specifically about AI, and I'm sure AI is going to come up again in this conversation. Not only has AI changed skills in terms of the skills that companies need, but also how they're addressing filling some of those skill gaps. And so Nadeem, I wanted to talk to you about this. In the Future of Jobs report, the World Economic Forum estimated that around 86% of employers expect AI info processing to transform their businesses by 2030. What are some of the trends that you noticed in this past year, and how organizations are adopting some of those?
Yeah, that's a great question. Talking amongst my peers, it's been really weird. They've doubled down without actually trying to understand what they were applying AI to. A friend of mine was working with companies like, yeah, my CEO came back from a TED talk and he's like, AI everything. Oh, what? We have a challenge. And I think that's the unfortunate case. Like, there's a new trend. I don't want to be on the back end of this trend. I'd like to be up front, but we're not thinking in terms of what are my business goals and how can I leverage my learning to apply to those goals? That's what I see. And that's what I've seen, talking to my peers, talking to other people, and in general research. It's becoming a bandwagon trend, which is unfortunate.
Nadeem, can you just AI everything for us in
Yes,
the roadmap, please? That's great. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Yeah, to that end too, talking about maybe a missed opportunity to connect the AI needs to a company's goals. That's something obviously we talk about a lot at SkillsWave. And so Kathleen, I wanted to talk to you about an area that you're passionate about, which is around content catalogs. So many moons ago, we did some research with Morning Consult, and we found that 1 in 5 employees around there saw kind of generic learning recommendations as a barrier. And I think that also applies to HR managers and leaders who are trying to justify a spend when it's connected to business goals. So what kind of changes did you see in the area around curated catalogs and that kind of thing in 2025?
Yeah, thanks, Chase. I think that's related to Nick's comments around skill frameworks too. And I think in all content consumption, we've seen over the past decade this real shift away from there's so much content. How do we lean on trusted curation for that? So who are the people, the brands, the platforms we trust? And we come to trust them because they do the hard work and really put themselves and their brand behind that work. So I think trusted curation of content that makes that content meaningful is critical. Content libraries are just so massive, they become useless, right, and meaningless. And so unless it's pathed to my own career, my own job, and to open roles in my own company that I'm striving for, it just becomes this kind of wasteland of content. And like I said, I think we've seen this across a variety of industries, right? We see this in the way we consume news and media. We see this in what we expect of our own filtered recommendations in the way we shop and just consume content. So I don't think learning is any different. Those expectations apply to that as well.
And to that point about sort of likening like learning and the personalization of that learning, do you think that, sorry, Kathleen, this is a follow-up for you. Do you think that that's something that is more important for the employee or the employer?
I think it's both, right? The employee needs certain outcomes to come out of their employees. They need to build talent pipelines from within, right? We know it's so much more valuable to upskill the employees you have toward jobs within your company versus trying to go out and find new talent. And also that's a retention tool, at the same time. So I think for employers, there's a variety of reasons why that's important. And I think employees too are looking to find meaning, right, in their life, in their work. And so I think that points to a desire for that meaning and to continue to grow in the careers that they have and with the companies they're with.
Yeah, that's a great take. Lesley, I saw you nodding along, and obviously you're uniquely positioned as our head of people here at SkillsWave. Did you want to add anything kind of about the value of personalization and learning?
Yeah, I think that's kind of really where we're going. Like Kathleen had said, the individual journey is really important, and people are wanting to have value in what they're taking, just not taking it to check a box. And organizations at the same time want that skill set to grow because they're also growing, they're going to be evolving, they need those skill sets to be able to be ahead of the market. And that's what I think is really important. So, yeah.
And Lesley, you had shared some research with me and with us earlier about McLean and Company. You said, that their findings were that they are starting to treat skills as part of like a compensation conversation, and I think that sort of aligns to that as well. Can you expand a little bit on what you're seeing in that department?
No, 100%. It's actually been quite interesting. It's been part of the HR community for many years. And this is the first year I've actually seen in a compensation session with 200 HR people where one of the focuses was skills. I hadn't seen that before. It was quite interesting for me to see that was one of the topics that they did breakout sessions in with 200 people is what does skills mean for your company? How are you applying skills? What are the top skills that people need? And I walked away going, wow, I have not seen that before. And I find learning has sort of fallen in between the cracks. Like we always talk about compensation, we talk about benefits, but where is actually learning in that employee journey? Where is that in the company journey? So it was really interesting to see how it tied, how they were tying it to compensation. And to me, that kind of reflects what are we looking for our hypos? What are we looking for those core skills? What are we looking for those soft skills like critical thinking? So that really came through, and I found it quite fascinating, very different.
I think, Lesley, when you talk about skills and the learning journey, it makes me think about how to show proof points of that learning.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So we can say that we have pathways and you're learning new skills, but how do you actually demonstrate that you can apply that in the work you do?
Yes.
And I think that's shifted and changed, right? For decades, I think we were trying to find a new model of skill currency that's different than credit at a university level. And I think we've talked about it for many years, but now it seems to be coming to just more recognition of we need different proof points of learning beyond credit. We need applied application.
100%.
We need proof, right, of learning and proof that you can take something and do your job differently. And so I think what that evolves to look like is very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. It made me think also, Kathleen, sorry to go on to the conversation, but it's also interesting because we're in the skills world, like we see some trends, unfortunately, towards replacing that proxy we've always had for skills and knowledge in a degree with I'll say generic skills like communication, right? And like I think collectively we all recognize that communication is actually like sort of an overarching theme of a large swath of particular skills on how good communication happens. So it's interesting. I think there's still a lot of dynamics around trying to dial in what's that right level, both to organize what people know and to be able to assess it properly. And if you get too granular, then it scales poorly, right? You just can't deal with I've got me as a person has 20,000 skills. That's not effective way to evaluate that. But also if you're too generic and too high level, it's not really an effective sort of marker for what you potentially know. So it's lots of thinking and evolution going on. I'm glad we're at sort of the core of it, but there's lots of stuff going on right now, and it's very interesting. We'll see where it goes this year.
I would agree that you have 20,000 skills for sure. At
a
minimum.
Not all.
Minimum. At least
not all the same proficiency level, right? Novice. But thank you. Very kind.
At a minimum. But you talked through the kind of not generic, but skills like communication, right? Durable skills. Yep. And so there's the difference of durable skills that could be common across industry, across work. At certain levels, we have expectations around a level of proficiency around these durable skills like communication and writing and speaking. But then there are other skills that are unique to you and your industry and to the work you do. And so measuring those might look different, right? And there's some commonality we could get across the durable skills that doesn't really exist across the more unique skill set.
Absolutely.
I think more like there's a best practice minimum level.
Yeah. Yep.
The tail end of that conversation is a really great segue into sort of, where we started was we wanted to talk about kind of the year in review, some of the trends we had been seeing. So now I wanted to shift gears a little bit and then look forward. And so, as far as our skill predictions go for 2026, Nick, I'd like to start back with you here. How do you see learning modalities evolving in this coming year?
Evolving or reinforcing it? Yeah, good question. Because we obviously are keenly aligned to workforce upskilling, there's lots of thoughts about how we continue to develop that effectiveness, right? So, the whole skills conversation is ultimately about targeting and making sure that the things that you are learning are applicable to what you need to learn, and how you can apply it, right? So to Kathleen's point, if I have 27,000 skills or whatever, if I'm really good at quilling as a skill, that's great, but it doesn't apply to my job. So that's wonderful. It's nice to know about that. And so I think the whole skills taxonomy piece is the whole breakdown analysis of that, the whole work that's going on in so many different forums to look at what skills jobs are demanding, and trying to see your fit. Like, that whole personalization is going to continue to, I'll say, both accelerate and be more and more and more targeted, right? So I think that's pretty critical. But the tied to that, I think, is, and Kathleen brought it up a little bit, is how do we know that we did a good job there in that targeting and that it was effective? So whether it's assessment as part of that, which it always will be to a degree, it's also thinking about what materially changed and what forms that takes. So we've talked a little bit about adult learners have no time, right? They're trying to fit in learning in their moments between life and work and all the things they're doing, which is being professional for a number of years. I think we all feel that that's challenging, or even for us who live and breathe this every day, right? And so I think trying to make sure that not just the material and the things you're learning match up, but also it fits your particular needs, meet you where they're at, right? Making sure that so there's lots of conversation now, is micro learning, while we feel really great about it, is it necessarily effective, or is it learning for the sake of showing we did some learning, versus what's the result you get out of it? So I think, tying back to Kathleen's point, like, again, whether it's formal assessment or inferred assessment from just what you're able to do, I think it all is sort of connected into that cycle of development. And Lesley knows tons more about this than I do, but ultimately about how you see that career progression of the individuals, and you see that progress, and you can tie that professional development, that learning that they did and in the year, into that particular journey for them. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can connect those things together, the more that we can help provide optionality about, here's all the paths you could be on, right? Here's the direction you could go, and it fits into their life. I think we'll be better off for it. So, there's no end to problems to solve, and we're definitely tackling a significant portion of the ones I think they're most important. I can imagine that because of the stress of life and the demands, and everybody was looking for more to get done, I don't know that we're getting more time or more ability to spend time learning. So organizations that value it are really, really apt to have some very strong success with their employees. But also, just how do we make sure that we meet people where they're at? Because it might be different this week than last week.
I have something I kind of want to throw out there. So in regards to sort of in regards to what you're talking about, Nick, about skills, and even just looking at the personal journey, there's taking a course in communications, that's a skill that you need to develop, or a course in problem solving. Could that be applied to something that someone actually enjoys? So, for example, could it be learning how to knit? There's problem solving in there, there's detail, there's pattern, there's something mistake, you have to go back and you have to redo it. Are these something that we can look at applying things that are maybe not so generic, but are more to the person's interest, that still give the same outcome as for like a soft skill?
Nice. Yeah. Well, and joy in learning always makes it more effective, right? So absolutely.
Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah. Like, people don't have time, they want to do something they really enjoy. Mm-hmm. So can we harness some of that and have that transition into development to skills that are required and needed? Mm-hmm. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, Chase, the other thing that I didn't think about until now, also the other thing we're seeing, I guess, that I think is just because the times we're in and the economic uncertainty, I think, that exists, is we're seeing governments increasingly trying to use and support skills development, upskilling, in an effort to stabilize economies and support struggling industries, right? Like, that's I don't know. I think every conversation nowadays is a little bit like that that we're having, and so it's interesting because everybody is trying to do it at different scales, whether it's it's at the state or provincial level or federal level. There's just lots. So even that beyond that, there's even some conversations with commonwealths and things like that, right? Just thinking through how do we help the people who are struggling, and how do we help those industries that are impacted, because we're in a very, I'll say, unique time at the moment. So
Yeah, that's a great call out, Nick. Kathleen, I saw you just come off mute there.
I'd like to say something mildly provocative. It might be just because I have this friendly heart behind me and I feel like, well, why not? It's Friday. I feel like microlearning had its moment. Let the chat blow up. That's not to say micro credentials, executive education, micro masters, which I'm a fan of. All of those things I think hugely valuable. Those are multi-week progressions, courses with metrics, application. I think the micro learning of, I mean, I remember in the heyday of the micro learning, which maybe we're still in, some would argue, it was what can you learn while in line at the grocery store? I don't learn anything in line at the grocery store. What am I going to learn in 3 minutes, right? This is, we've all talked about this. That's cocktail party learning. That's, oh, look at Kathleen. She said something interesting. And that's it. No follow-ups, right? That isn't real sustained learning that leads to new outcomes, right? That leads to changes in your life and your career. That's just tidbits, and that's fun. That's fun in conversation, but I think that's less meaningful in your life and in your career.
I would say for the grocery piece, you probably learn patience, or should try to.
That's right. That's right.
Self-serve. Go self-serve.
I'm picking up my gum.
It's the $20 for a pint of raspberries. I think that's probably.
Yes, 100%.
We on the marketing end of things, we've been talking a lot about like a job aid versus learning. So Kathleen, when you're talking about those, micro learning, again, there is place for them, but there's a difference between watching a YouTube video that you can then maybe return to later to help you do a certain task in your job, more than once, but really leaning into the learning piece as like a transformative piece that's going to help reorient or help your business get to where you want to go. Nadeem, I'm going to come back to you talking about. We already talked about AI a little bit, and then I really liked your position on that. As the technology advances and skills maybe become obsolete more quickly, what do you think employers should prioritize when they're upskilling their teams for the future?
Oh man. Can I get another question, Chase? No. It's unfortunate. Like I still feel in general there is this knee-jerk reaction to what we should be upskilling, what we should be driving our teams toward. And there's a disconnect. Kathleen spoke wonderfully about it, that there is, microlearning. Okay, great. But how does that actually move my organization forward? How does that move my department forward? In a past life, our company was going forward with Amazon Web Services. No one had Amazon Web Services. I happened to sit beside a dev, and this is purely coincidental, and I knew that this person was always red eyes, studying hard, and was, always looking to make it. And I was like, oh, this looks like the type of person who I think if I invest in will make this difference. And it wasn't just this one and done Ron Popeil model. It was, oh, now that you've got the learning, the background, I'm going to put you in this Amazon project and this Amazon project. That gave both of us the wins, in that he had repetitive practice of that skill, and it aligned with the business need. Our department looked good, which no good deed goes unpunished, and I wound up with another one, but whatever. It moved the department forward, it moved the company forward, but more importantly, this person got immense satisfaction from their job. They were applicable, and they became like a champion for applied learning. That's not happening. The challenge we're seeing is the organization is facing a set of challenges. Leaders are not utilizing their learning and development partners. Not everybody has access to Lesley, so there's a problem there. But they don't have those partners, and they're not working together to say, oh, this is what I need my team to be. And in many cases, they don't even know what their skills their team has. So if you were to get that sort of direction, then I think you've got engagement, potential, and like all of the good stuff checked off. But that's not happening. And lack of guidance and following trends, I feel, is dangerous. And we've got to tie it to the business goals and to, as Lesley pointed out, people who are interested and excited to learn and apply it. That's the secret sauce.
Yeah, and Nadeem, that makes me think, like, good point. Like, somebody that does prompt engineering, there's going to be something there that might be beneficial, but that's not a strategy.
Yeah, no.
Right? That's not a learning strategy. That's not a plan of development of people or skills in the organization. And I think every organization, and then I know that example you're talking about with the AWS piece, like, we all go through transformative times in business, right? And I've always believed, and I think this company is really founded around a lot of this belief, which is learning is fundamental to your strategy and your business. It's not a nice to have or an add-on or something that you can spend less on this year because where people don't need to learn. It really is, if you can make it be and be the kind of company that values it and it aligns to what you're trying to achieve, then that's a big differentiator, I think, as a company for you. And so I think ultimately, Nadeem, you're talking about, is it a strategy or is it a thing that's sort of sidecar? Yeah. And I know Lesley champions that all the time and in her networks as well, right? So it's very interesting about people's, I'll say, maturity levels that they're at around the learning journey, right?
I also liked what you said, Nadeem, about anchoring that learning to applicable projects or tasks within the organization, because you're right, you can learn something. Like I learned French all the way through high school and everything else. My son's in French immersion. I can't speak a word. He's teaching me because I don't use it. And I think you're right, like not having that anchor at the end. So if you have a skill or you're trying to develop someone, to have a project or something they can get their hands into so they can apply it and learn it and it sticks. I think that was really good. I like that.
I agree, Lesley. I was glomming onto Nadeem's use of the term describing an employee as a champion of applied learning. And, we think about a lot of learning by necessity happens asynchronously, but it doesn't mean you can't have cohorts of people, right, enrolled in a thing and talking about it and talking about how it's meaningful to their work, sharing those, real workplace examples and learning together in that way. And I think I've heard from different clients we work with that it's useful to get people together virtually or in person to talk about the learning they're doing on their own. And I think that would foster more of, as you said, those champions of applied learning and make a real difference.
It's genuinely scary. We do, many professional development companies do hackathons. And usually, the CEO comes down and says, like, here's my pet projects, hack away. No. But, you would like to have that growth. And this individual at this company, they were like, oh, well, Nadeem, could you go grab lunch? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go do that. And the first day I brought one pizza because it was a team of 7. And then the next day it was like, oh, there's 20 people sitting over there and they're talking, oh, I could set up. Oh my God. By the third day, there was 26 people on one project. And to your point, Kathleen, like the learning and then I'm going to go back and request that course. What was that again? And how do I get into this project? I was like, wow, my job here is done. These are the droids I was looking for. But it's just amazing how well they come together and motivate and then leverage it. Like, it wasn't a motivation that I have a budget. It was, I've used this. And many of those people have moved on to Google and whatnot. And they're like, man, Nadeem, that was a good time. So,
Nadeem, I'm mostly concerned about your one pizza for 7 people. So when I
would agree. I'm
week,
like, that's
Nadeem,
very underestimating.
It's amazing people came back. I mean,
yes. I was like, I have one pizza and.
So that means we need to increase our pizza budget at SkillsWave. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes. Nadeem, when I see you next week, I'm ordering the food. That is not enough.
Noted and noted.
But that's another great example, Nadeem, when you're talking about too, like Lesley talked about, giving people the opportunity to learn new skills in ways that excite them, and use the knitting if that was something that you're passionate about, and giving people that space to, when they have a skill, to apply it in a way that they are excited to apply it, right? That's obviously not feasible like on 100% of projects, because there are things always that need to get done instead of want to get done. But I think that that's a really kind of like cool full circle moment that we reached just as part of this conversation. Lesley, I wanted to turn it over to you. The World Economic Forum last month, in January, put out a report, and it kind of outlines 4 possible futures of AI and talent. And I'm coming back to AI because I feel like a lot of people are dealing with either the transformation that Nadeem has spoken about, or they're feeling maybe on the back foot that we've covered here as well. But one of the scenarios is like a stalled progress future, where basically AI advances faster than the workforce, and then a lot of roles are kind of displaced without the economic benefit that is kind of promised as part of AI. I wanted to talk to you about what you think that scenario would mean for the future of jobs and for the future of skills. It's a big question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I said this was a big topic at a recent conference that I was at. And the interesting thing is some of that conversation went back to skilled workers, and more people going in that direction versus going in the university direction, which is interesting. And that has really actually quite helped, like governments and construction. Like there's so much that we are having this cohort of people that are leaving the workforce, and they are crying for these types of skills, for electricians, for plumbers, for carpenters, for all of those. And it's interesting to see people now are starting to think like that. They're like, you know what, I'd love to be an electrician. I think that would be really cool, instead of going, I need to go to university and down that path. So I think with AI coming about, people are really starting to shift their minds a bit, which I actually think is a positive thing. I think we need to fill some of those skills, especially with skilled trades, and that also just sort of opens it up on the other side as well. So you're going to have people that are in the non-skilled trades, not a flip word, but on the other side that are going to be even more focused, and you're going to have more dedication on that side as well. So I think there's a positivity that's going to come out of this. It's quite fascinating. And personally, I know 2 people one was a developer, and then the other person was in government, and they were like, you know what? I'm going to go back and become an electrician. I'm going to go back and become a general contractor. And I went, that's so cool. So it's interesting to start seeing this coming through.
I think, Lesley, that speaks to the importance of the ROI of your learning, which I think we talk about that a lot. And
yes,
we haven't mentioned it specifically here, but exactly to your point, will I learn something and be able to do something and also feed my family would be nice.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Versus
That's great.
cocktail learning and looking cute at a cocktail party.
Exactly. That's
equally
different
important.
ROI, Nadeem.
I gotta get that tattooed.
That's fantastic. We are just about at time here, but I did want to give an opportunity for each of you or any of you to add anything else that you feel like is pertinent as we're thinking ahead to 2026 and thinking about sort of what companies and what workers are going to be faced with when it comes to skills and skill development in 2026. So I'll just pause and I'll give people a moment to marinate with that.
I think I would lead with adaptability, right? I think there's still lots of things to be figured out, determined, and having worked in competency-based education models for more than a decade, and just understanding like learning sort of is a process, and it's so unique and situational in lots of ways. There's going to be lots of things that are tried, lots of things that aren't going to succeed. It'll be interesting. We're trying to be in as many conversations to get as much perspective as possible about what matters. There are some folks that are that are really leading the charge, thinking through like, oh great, I've got these skills models, I can apply them, and they're being successful. There's some people who are like, oh, what? I need to have some skills defined for my staff, right? So there is so many different levels of what people are doing and how they're involved. Just open mind, and certainly, getting connected with other experts is always never a bad thing. Everybody's got a perspective, and there's always something you can learn from someone else's point of view on some of these things. And we're in a time of change, I think, not just in what we're talking about subject-wise, but globally. And so I think just adaptability is going to be pretty important.
Yeah, I love that, Nick. You're bang on. I think adaptability is 100%, and that's just not for the learners or the people leaders, but for organization, for those that are building the programs like myself. There is no one fits all solution. We need to be able to evolve, adapt, and be fluent with how our organization learns and what value we can bring back. So I think adaptability is an excellent word.
As always, what Nick said impacted my own thinking, so I have totally different thought. Love adaptability. I think for me, the truism is learning is forever. And so the proof points might change, the modalities might change, but the need to continuously learn will not go away. So how we adapt to that, how we address that will look different. But that is kind of the anchor of where we start.
I love that.
Oh,
that was beautiful. Beautiful.
The heart's getting bigger.
I'm looking at the heart, and it's just like, oh, I love it.
Yeah, that was brilliant, Nick. I'd definitely go along with that, and then alignment, because we're in a dangerous space. It's very challenging. There's political environments that are making it difficult for countries, and then companies within them are being impacted outside of their own intentions, outside of their own business plan. So, well, now what do you do? And if you're not adaptable, if you don't have your richest resource, your people who are ready and able and aligned to address the business need as required, and you don't know that, it's moving at a speed that you will be left behind without a question. And I think we're now at the rate that you will be left behind and you won't be allowed to catch up, both the business as well as the people. So the adaptability and having that alignment will be critical going forward, rather than, I just got dropped off at this big box learning and there's 10 million courses. Oh, great. Well,
good luck.
Yeah,
good luck.
I got sushi fish cutting. Does that help me? Not what we needed.
It might.
But for you specifically,
precision.
For you specifically, we're trying to move forward with developing a common integration to set application, HRISs. How can we think of that and develop to a point where it works, and then from there we can just customize it? Hey, I'd recommend this. So if you can get that adaptability and aligning the learning needs to your business, I think the business has a chance, the people will grow, and then as they grow, whatever opportunities provide, they can move, freely within different companies.
And learning is forever, so you can always use what you learned in other contexts. So I love it. Yeah.
That's excellent.
Chase, it seems like we know what we're talking about sometimes. It's good.
I was going to say that's a really great way to wrap this up. I think both with some optimism and also some urgency, because I think that there's room for both.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say tremendous thank you to our panelists today, to each of you for providing your insights. Thanks so much to Anna Karina for all the production work that went into the behind the scenes here. And we'll wrap it up there. Thank you all so much. And thanks to the viewers for watching.
Thank you, Chase, for having us.
Thanks, Chase.
Yeah.
Have a great afternoon.
Onwards to learning.